when this is done well, expectations and agreements lead to long-term, successful, stress-free, productive relationships, which is what I think we all want, as opposed to trying to lead by, which I would argue isn't even leadership, assumptions and fantasies where none of these things are happening.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
And I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And if you want to know how to make an ass out of you and me, you know that saying. What is it? It's all about assumptions. And today we're going to make a cut straight through the challenges of running and leading. And we're going to talk about assumptions and how, unfortunately, that is what is at the root of breaking down any healthy business, any culture, any relationships. And we're going to unpack the difference between an expectation and an agreement from an assumption, because I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in making an ass out of you or me. But when we look back over our history of relationships gone bad, I can tell you something right now. It's because there was unspoken, agreed upon expectations, and that's ultimately what is an assumption and what led to the breakdown of that relationship. So, Dr. Stephen, we build world-class teams. This is about building world-class teams, being world-class leaders, and creating a culture and environment where everyone is set up to win. Like we said, it's about win, win, win. That's always the goal. Everybody wins. And if it's not a win-win-win, then and somebody loses, then it's lose, lose, lose. We have to create an environment, Dr. Stephen, where inside of the business, everybody wins. You know, this owner-operator's mindset is that, you know, I will build a team around me that supports me. The CEO's mindset is I will build a team and I'm coming around them to support them. And a CEO is looking for ways to support the people. And so this is the CEO conversations. This is the CEO discussion about expectations and agreements. This applies to your practice, to the relationship with your patient base. This applies to your team. This applies to your whole life, Dr. Stephen. I know it applies in my marriage. It applies with my children as a parent. It applies in my business relationships. It applies in all my relationships in my life. So, Dr. Stephen, excited to dive into this conversation, which, of course, was fueled by our most recent board meeting where we were able to confront some things that are really important to us, some truths that we hold very close to our heart because we know them to be true.
Yeah, Dr. Pete, you know, as you're speaking, you know, I just realized that there are so many symptoms associated with doing this wrong, right? So if you find in your practice that there's all kinds of stress and strain and drama and upset and anger, frustration, broken relationships, patient turnover, team turnover, staff turnover, I mean, these are all symptoms of a gap in your skills around setting expectations and agreements, and starting with those expectations and agreements with yourself, right? As a leader, right? So I don't want to ignore that. Like, we're part of the team. So when you hear us say team, guys, please make sure you hear that you're on the team. Okay. So you are on the team. It's not you and the team. It's you're on the team. Okay. You happen to have the privilege of being the leader of the team, right? But you're on the team. So don't ever forget that. Right. So starting with your own expectations and agreements with yourself and keeping those expectations and agreements, right? And then being able to lead, which implies there's other people following you, right? So whether we're talking about your team members or we're talking about your patient base, your tribe, those are all people of your tribe, right? So they're following you, right? So in order to really be a remarkable CEO and be a remarkable leader, you've got to build the skill set of setting expectations and agreements and doing this really well, right? So the opposite of this is what's called having assumptions and fantasies, right? So assumptions and fantasies will lead to all of that trail of tears that I just described and all of those symptoms, right? So it's just you're operating by assumptions and fantasies as opposed to expectations and agreements. So expectations and agreements implies that you actually have a conversation, right? There is a dialogue, right? There is a communication And the best communications in this situation are caught in writing, right? So Dr. John DeMartini, one of my big mentors, taught me that early on, is like, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. It wasn't in this context, but I took it into this context. Is like, you got to write this stuff down. Like, I've never been a person that needed contracts, but what I recognize is that, no, I just, I may not need contracts, but this relationship and arrangement needs contracts. And that's a different thing, right? It's like, oh, okay. So we need to be equal parts relational and transactional in our leadership, so that when those two come together in the right balance, that's transformational leadership, right? We've talked about that in the past. This is an example of how this is what transformational leadership looks like. This is how you walk that out. It's coming together, Dr. Pete, and whether you're talking about a team member or a patient that's onboarding into your clinic, setting up expectations and agreements is one person says, here's what you can expect from me to bring to this relationship to make it successful. Okay. And here's what I expect you to bring to this relationship or this arrangement to make it successful. Now, please do the same for me. What do you expect to bring to this relationship to make it successful? And those are your expectations. And what do you expect of me to bring to this relationship to make it successful? So this is literally, it's like 4 columns of like, these are the expectations, and we speak them out. We put them to words, right? So that we can both look and say, yes, I agree, or I disagree. It may be time for an agreement, or there's a collaboration or a negotiation even, and we're coming to the point where we finally come down to a summary, do what, by whom, by when, right? So, and it's literally an agreement is formed, right? So it's a 2-person, it's not a monologue, it's a dialogue, it's spoken, and it's captured in writing, Dr. Pete. When this is done well, expectations and agreements lead to long-term, successful, stress-free, productive relationships, which is what I think we all want, as opposed to trying to lead by, which I would argue isn't even leadership, assumptions and fantasies where none of these things are happening.
Yeah, this is a culture of people stepping in and having mature conversations. Maturity really is what, when I think about, hey, I'm going to, and I always go back to, because we work with clinics, where you're, as a listener, in clinic, you're with your community, and patients are coming into your practice. You might have 20, 30 plus people start with you every month. Okay. Here's why practices stay small. We say that from 0 to 150, it's all about doctor training. 150 to 300, it's all about, your team being trained. Anything above 300, it's all about patient training. If you find yourself in a practice that's just like this, we're hitting this ceiling, we cannot grow. Like we're doing all the things, we're not growing. I'm going to tell you something right now. This may be the thing right here that's actually holding you back, and you will double your practice, triple your practice if you could get this right, because it actually comes back to training your patients, and training your patients actually starts right here, but it also stays here. This is why I like to say expectations are meant to be set. Agreements are meant to be kept. You set an expectation, you keep the agreement. Okay. And it's when those two things come together, that's where you have a relationship and a bond that leads to greater success. And that's what we're saying. And success leaves clues, right? So this is the clue. The clue is that you start here. Okay. So like you said, with the patient, if you have a patient and you haven't been clear, crystal clear about what it means to be a patient in this office, to be accepted as a patient. See, we don't start people to stay. That's the difference. A true conversion, people start to stay. We're starting a lot of people, but they're not staying. Why is that? Well, we're not making agreements. We're not forming an agreement on the front end with clarity, and we're not being honest. That's what's happening. We're not being honest. You're letting people in and you're not being honest with them. And then you can, in your team meeting, complain about it and get on somebody's, back because their scorecard says this is their KPI. But if we're not being honest in the front end, we're dealing with symptoms. Like you said, these are the symptoms. Why are people dropping out of care? The question isn't if they are, it's when they are. But when they're dropping out is way earlier than you would ever have wanted them to drop out of care. And it's happening because I can tell you something right now. We have not done a good enough job being clear of what we do here in this office. And what we do here and how we operate and what you can expect of us. And then what you are expecting coming in and making sure that those things align. I like to say when what the patient wants and what they need is what you offer, that's when you win, right? When what the patient wants and what they need is what you offer, you win. So our job is to bring those things together, the wants, the needs, and the offering. And when we do that and we make it in a way, it's like, that is actually what I want. And I didn't realize that that's what I need, but now I realize what I need is chiropractic care. I didn't know that. And what you offer is that. And so in order for me to get the chiropractic care here at this office, I have to do it that way. Oh, and then do you agree? Right? So we have 4 things we agree to in a conversion process, right? We agree that this is the problem. We agree that these are the goals. We agree that this is the path that you got to walk out to get there. And we're going to commit to things like time and energy. And then we're going to agree to the financial arrangement as well. And we're not going to think about this. Any patient relationship that you've ever had where you weren't crystal clear about all those 4 things, it didn't end well. I'm just saying, and we all know it. Like, so why would any other relationship with a team member, why would we think it would any be different? Why? And this is at a high level. If you start 30 people a month, 20, 30 people a month, imagine you weren't starting them all with strong agreements. I mean, just shoot me now. I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah. Are we in the business of doing day 1s, day 2s? Are we in the business of getting people to try chiropractic, to like close people? Like, I love that. Oh yeah, just close people. It's like, close people. Let's convert people. Yeah. Like, true conversion means that they start to stay, right? So we convert people with an eye on retention, right? So retention begins at conversion, right? So, and that's only going to happen with clear expectations and agreements from the beginning. So our job is to create ideal patients and collect ideal patients, right? Like, if you really want to make an impact, or you have replacements, right? So, which is exhausting and demoralizing and totally unfulfilling. Sorry, no judgment here. I'm not trying to project philosophy on you. It's like, we're having a business conversation right now. It's like, God is good when you actually do what the people. I took a note here, Dr. Pete. That was so good what you just said, right? So here's my takeaway from you. When you're setting expectations and agreements with patients, specifically like around recommendations for care and office policies, is like, the only way to get what you want is to get what you need. It's because people never, people don't show up at our office being like, what I really want, doc, is I'd really love to commit to a care plan. If I could get 36 visits in the first 4 months and give you $3,800 for that, that's really what I'm here for, right? So it's like, is there any way you could get me some, I need some bad habits to break, right? So I really want to work on my own discipline and my own, influence on my own health. Like, I got some postural issues. If you could really just hammer me about that, it'd be great. And then, do you have any exercises for me to do? I'd love to do them daily, right? So it's like this, the only thing I like better than flossing daily is doing my spinal corrective exercises, my spinal hygiene workout. That's what I really want. And by chance, do you guys do workshops? Do you do workshops? I heard that it's all you can eat consultations here too. Is that true? Right. So it's like, Dr. Pete, that's not what people want. That's not what they're showing up wanting. Nobody's Googling that and showing up being like, thank heavens, this is what you guys sell here. No, but in order to get what they want, you've got to make sure that they get what they need. Right. So, and setting those expectations and agreements on the front end is just so awesome. As you were talking there about, you're just dropping bombs here, buddy, by the way. So it's the idea of like, your practice being stuck at 150 a week, that's doctor training. Team being sort of stuck between 150 and 300, that's team training. Over 300 or stuck under 600 a week, it's patient training, right? So we're called to be light and salt, right? So when you, well, how do you walk that out in your business, in your practice? Is like, the light is the expectations and the salt is the accountability around those things, right? So, and being able to recognize this, like it's the salt. It's when you set expectations and agreements, that's the salt. So in our home, we cook. My wife is amazing. She cooks 20 meals a week, right? Camilla's awesome, right? So she's amazing. And Sheila, our house manager, she's awesome too. I don't want to forget Sheila and all of this. It's Sheila too. It's Camilla Sheila, not my Sheila, not our COO. It's very confusing for everybody. But Camilla has a house manager, Sheila. She's an awesome chef. But the two of them, they just cook all the time, right? And what's famous in our house is it just needs a little salt. Like that's literally the expression that you hear three times a day. It's like, I just think it only needs a little salt. And the kids just roll their eyes and like, yeah, it needs a little salt, because salt is what brings out all of the other flavors. You have to understand that it's like that's the power of salt, right? So let this lesson of expectations and agreements be the salt, right? So because whether we're talking about building your team of A players or surrounding yourself with A patients, right? Ideal patients, right? So maybe the secret missing ingredient is what we're talking about right now, whether we're in our hiring process and we're setting expectations and agreements around what's the purpose of this place? What's our vision of serving that purpose and manifesting the dent we want to make in the universe? What's our mission, which is how are we going to serve that, right? Those are agreements. When we set up core values, like you said, Dr. Pete, the bouncer of the business, this is a code of conduct. These are agreements. When we set up team policies, this is what it means. Like if you're 5 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're late, don't bother, right? So there's policies like this. We train like lives depend on it, because they do show up prepared, right? That's a policy. We have meetings, we have reports so that we have visibility and accountability. Like those are policies. Like we have team policies, and we have patient policies, office policies. Why? To be guardrails to protect the experience of the patient and ensure the best possible outcomes. That's why we have policies, right? These are the expectations and agreements that we lay out for our patients, right? This is the salt and the light, right? This is what's going to drive the outcome in every single part of the business. It's that nuanced, it's that tiny sprinkle that's critical for you to optimize each and every aspect of the practice.
Please stick around for more business insights from this week's bonus interview with our remarkable success partner, dedicated to helping you more successfully help more people. Enjoy. All right, CEOs. So as promised, I am here today in the studio with a new friend of mine, a colleague of mine who I've been hearing about over these past, let's call it year and a half, since I know we've been working with your company, and you've been serving so many of our doctors, especially in Australia. I am honored to have with me today in the studio, Dr. Omar Ayouby, an amazing chiropractor. He's been a chiropractor for 2 decades. Can you believe it's already been 20 years for you, man? I mean, time flies when you're having fun. An incredible doctor, chiropractor, and also radiologist. So it's not often you meet a chiropractor who's also licensed as a radiographer, but he is. And so, Doc, before we get into some of the questions that I have for you and how you're helping doctors use leverage to function as CEOs and create a bigger impact, a greater income in their businesses, tell us a little bit about you. What would you want us to know about you? Again, I told the audience just a little bit, but anything else you'd want us to know? And then I'm gonna grill you a little bit here today. No, I'm just kidding. We're gonna have some fun.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pete, for that. I really appreciate this opportunity and your time. And so I'm from Sydney, Australia, and I think a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today really it appeals more to the Australian-based chiropractors. The business that we run appeals to them rather than your US audience. So just to give it a little bit of context. But yeah, I'm Omar Ayouby, qualified radiographer and chiropractor. Been a chiropractor since 2002, 2003. It's been a long time, so I'm forgetting the years now. And yeah, so it's been about 20 years, and time does fly. And I'm thinking more about that every day. Yes, time does fly. And so we started, our chiropractic business is the Back Clinic. We started that in 2003. And then in 2013, we started Innate Radiology, which is Innate Radiology is a teleradiology service for Australian chiropractors. We provide that service Australia-wide, and that started in 2003. And we've been running it ever since then. And as you've already mentioned, I do have a radiography background as well, and that gave me insight into the radiology field. And being a chiropractor, I merged those two fields together, and we're helping a lot of Australian chiropractors with that background.
So I love this, and I love talking to an entrepreneur, and it's very clear to me right now, and I think our audience, and hopefully a lot of the US who heard you say that are sticking around, because this is going to be awesome. This is a great interview, and I want them to hear from you because you're a CEO who is innovating, and you've created a business. And we always say a business exists to solve a problem. That's what exists
Yeah.
if for someone else, that's what it exists for. So let me ask you, so you were inspired at some point to launch this business. So here you were 2002 and 3, launched the back clinic. You guys are going, serving, saving lives. All of a sudden 2013 comes up. Talk to me about that. What's going on? What's going inside of your entrepreneurial brain that made you decide, okay, I'm going to launch another business? Take us through that problem solving. Like, what are we going to go after? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love the entrepreneurial thing. I really love it. This is what I think about. This is what I talk about every day with people, right? So I love it, this entrepreneurial spirit. So what was it with me? So I was a qualified radiographer first, right? That was my undergraduate degree, and we did chiropractic as a postgraduate. And while I was studying chiropractic, after I'd finished a radiography degree, I was working as a radiographer in medical centers, in hospitals, and I gained an insight into how chiropractors and other practitioners, but how chiropractors, because I was studying chiropractic at the time, were able to refer for radiology exams, right? Now, in Australia, we've got these services, the radiology services, paid for by the government. It's a Medicare program. So in the Australian context, patients, citizens of Australia get their X-rays paid for by the government. So I'm working as a radiographer. I'm seeing that, hey, chiropractors can refer for X-rays. The patients are coming in, they don't have to pay for it, right? And I'm thinking, hang on a second. So this is while I was studying chiropractic, I was able to go, hey, hang on a second. There's something going on here. There's a referral thing going on here. The patients are getting the service for free. And I was already thinking before I had even graduated as a chiropractor, hey man, I've got something here. The chiropractor can refer, if the chiropractor had their own X-ray machine, and in Australia, some chiropractors do have their own X-ray machine. They're able to take their own X-rays, they can refer. And if I can bring Medicare into the chiropractic profession and allow chiropractors to bill the government for this service, I think this is a win-win for everyone. The customer, and if I can remunerate the chiropractors somehow, it's a win for the chiropractic owners or their businesses, because obviously they're making money out of this. So it's a win for all parties, the customer, the business owner. It's a win for us where we're able to provide this service, and everyone's winning out of this. So this all came about while I was studying chiropractic and working as a radiographer and getting insight into that field and how the government is paying for that service that the chiropractors were already using.
So you didn't start it right away. So you finished your chiropractic studies and you started your practice, but it was almost a decade later before. So you were taking your own X-rays in your clinic, and you're in the back clinic, you were marking and analyzing your own and doing your own reporting. So it took about, almost a decade before you launched this. What was that? What was kind of what had to happen for you in your business, your first business, before you were able to launch the second business?
Yeah, so being so I'm 44 now. So if we go back 20 years ago, I was 22, 23, 24 by the time I graduated from chiropractic. Being a 24-year-old, I was young. Even though I had the idea, I didn't have confidence. So if I think back at myself 20 years ago, I lacked a lot of confidence. I had no experience. I had no family members in the business of radiology. Even though I was working in radiology, there was no one to go to with that. So what I was doing for that first decade was using my contacts within the radiology field, or some of the people that I used to work with had their own radiology business set up. And I made an agreement with them. I had a working relationship with them. I said, hey man, look, I'm going to take my own X-rays. How about, you do the reporting, you've got the radiologists already. You've got the whole setup, you've got the whole infrastructure. How about I use your infrastructure, and you remunerate us a small fee for that, So that was the setup for the first decade. I didn't have confidence. I didn't have the experience to go up to radiologists and propose this idea to them, and I didn't know how to remunerate a radiologist. I didn't even know how to negotiate terms with them. So that was happening for the first decade. So it wasn't until 2013 when I had the confidence then, probably in my mid-30s, to actually say, hey man, hey look, maybe I can set this whole thing up myself. Maybe I can set up this whole infrastructure myself. So I think it was a lack of confidence. That's probably what it was in the early years.
I also think, like you said, it's a lack of confidence, but it's also at the same time, like you were building up your relationships in the market, you were studying the market, you were also owning your profession, knowing that the clients that you're going to be serving moving forward were your own colleagues as chiros. So you were going to be serving them. So it gave you an opportunity to, like you said, build the relationships with others in the community there, but it also enabled you to like put your 10,000 hours in chiro and really become a chiropractor who built a business. And now, because to open a second business of any kind, that requires a lot of time, energy, focus, and money. I mean, and here you are already leveraged because you're in your business. So I just love having this conversation with another entrepreneur because, again, it just goes to show, like, even if you don't have confidence, eventually, if you have a vision, you like stay with it. Don't give up. I love that you held on to it for 10 years and then you decided to take it. So now you've been doing it for 10 years. So let's fast forward a little bit and bring you up. Now we're in 2022. So now you've been running the back clinic for 20 years and Innate Radiology for 10 years almost. So one of the questions, that I have today is, so how are you helping specifically if I'm a client? So I'm a chiropractor. Okay. I am.
Yeah.
And you're Innate Radiology. Like, what's it look like for me if you were to say, hey, I'm going to hire you or use your services in my clinic? Cause I have a clinic, I have an X-ray unit. What does that look like for that conversation for me as a doctor who's not using Innate Radiology? Why would I take that next step in working with you? And how are you helping me be more successful and help more people? I'd love to hear like how that discussion goes.
Yeah, Pete. Yeah, you're right. After that confidence, it wasn't just a lack of confidence. You're right. It does take time to build up the networks and to build up, the knowledge and intelligence. So you're right. So since 2013, we've been helping a lot of Australian chiropractors. And what we bring to the table is we say, look, man, Dr. Pete, you're already referring for X-rays, right? You're already referring for X-rays. How about you join us, our team? You be a part of our team, and we pay you for a service that you're already using. And the payment that we're making is, we go, hey, look, Dr. Pete, you've got the infrastructure already set up in your office. And if you don't, for the chiropractors that don't already have their own X-ray facility on site, we can help you with that, right? So that's another added thing, part of our business. We help chiropractors. We make it so easy for them to set up a radiology clinic within their own chiropractic practice, and we make it the most cost effective. So part of that time, a lot of time went into building those relationships, and I've got those relationships with some of the X-ray suppliers, and we've been able to provide chiropractors with the most cost-effective radiology setup. So we help with that and accreditation and all those things. So the chiropractor really doesn't need to do much. They don't even need to know anything. We bring all that to the table: the intellectual property, the know-how, the experience, the cost-effectiveness. We're adding dollars to the chiropractor's bottom line, and we're benefiting your patients, Dr. Pete, right? So rather than the chiropractor charging $150 for an X-ray, in the Australian context, I can say, hey, Dr. Pete, why don't you provide that service to your patients free of charge and focus their attention more on them investing into their chiropractic healthcare, right? And on top of that, we have a team of radiologists that provides you, Dr. Pete, with, the radiologist report, which gives you confidence, assurance that no pathology is being missed. There's no liability on you. So it's a win for you. It's a win for the patient. It's a win for the business. So we bring all of that, the know-how, cost effectiveness, money, save patients money and time. That's the business model.
I mean, at this point, I'm thinking, all right, why would we not be set up with you and doing business together? I mean, it makes zero sense other than if a doctor might say, all right, we're going to charge more for our X-rays, and we're going to have our patients pay us out of pocket more than maybe your company could ever be able to pay us for that. I mean, that'd be the only thing. So to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, you've taken all of the risk out. You have, you've obviously provided the highest level of service. You have professional radiologists doing the reporting. I mean, from that perspective, to me, it's a no-brainer. So in my opinion, we've just got to make sure that we reach every chiropractor in Australia who either has a unit or doesn't yet. And let's make sure we get them set up with one. I mean, you guys had the whole thing set up. So last question is this. So we always think in terms of the 4 limited resources. You probably heard us talk about that. This, all human beings, including CEOs, have 4 limited resources. We all have a limited amount of time. We all have a limited amount of energy, a limited amount of focus, and a limited amount of money. I mean, and so I've heard you tell me that you directly address the money component. You've taken that out of the equation by saying, hey, we're gonna pay you to take x-rays in your facility, and we'll mark them for you. Energy, hey, it takes a lot of energy. I know for me in my office, like we did more of a CBP model. So we were taking a lot of films and pre and post films, all this stuff. Like if you were to tell me, hey, we would help you with that, like you take the x-rays, we'll take care of like assessment, analyzing and all that and giving you a thorough report on that. That'd be massive for me as an example. So think about saving me time and energy and focus. It's huge. Or my associate doctors who are doing that. Now you freed me up and my associates to go do the thing that we need to be doing, which is growing the chiropractic business, serving more people at the table, growing the business. I mean, to me, when I think in terms of ROI, that's where my mind goes. Talk to us about that. Like when you think about, I mean, do you have visibility into your practices? Once they hire you, are they growing? Are they seeing more people? Are they growing since they start working with Innate Radiology? I'd love to know like what kind of some of the results have been for the docs and the clinics that you've been able to help.
Yeah, man. ROI, the most important question of all, right? So we've already covered things like, saving the chiropractor, the energy, the time, the focus. We take all that guesswork out. We run the operation. We help them run the operation. We help them set it all up. So that's all gone. In terms of return on investment on money, look, our chiropractors, we've got chiropractors all around Australia. I can track, what they're doing, the numbers that they're doing, and they are all growing, right? At the very least, year upon year, I see chiropractors just maintaining their volume. That's the very least. No chiropractors are going down. I mean, this business model works. It's a win. It's a win-win. It doesn't go backwards, right? So return on investment, we see things like, so let's talk real numbers. To do a setup in Australia, it'll cost the chiropractor for a brand new setup installed, fully functional, operational, under $70,000, right? That's a whole radiology setup for a chiropractor, under $70,000. Our chiropractors are making a return of, I'd say 40% minimum to 100% per annum, right? So that's the ROI, 40% minimum to 100% per annum paid monthly, right? So when you look at something like that, Dr. Pete, if you're a chiropractor in Australia, the number one investment right now is what we're talking about. There is hardly any investment out there in the market that offers a 40% to 100% return paid monthly per annum, right? When you look at real estate, you look at Bitcoin, you look at the stock market, they're all highly speculative. You need to borrow a lot of money. It can go down anytime. We're talking about a business that pays you cash flow every month, and it makes a return of 40 to 100%. I mean, these are real numbers, Dr. Pete, that I can, I keep track of these things. I keep track of these numbers of all our participating chiropractors.
Amazing. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Last question is a bonus question. How do people get in contact with you? How do they learn more? I know we're speaking specifically to, the Australia doctors here. And I know all you US doctors who are probably like me listening, like, how come we don't have anything like this here in the United States? Maybe there's a business opportunity. We need to figure it out. But
Maybe.
I love what you're doing. So yeah, how do we get more in contact with you, more information?
Yeah, easy, man. Just call me on my mobile number. I think it's +61 414 34 98 98, or just email me, omar@innateradiology.com.au.
Awesome. Well, Omar, thank you again for who you are and what you're doing to help advance our profession, help more chiropractors, help more people, help our CEOs build more remarkable practices so they can have more remarkable lives, having businesses that don't compete with their life, but complement their life, and ultimately help us make a bigger impact and a bigger income. And it's not all at the expense of our own selves or our team. So I appreciate you. Thank you for what you're doing for our profession. Keep up the great work. And I look forward to connecting with you, hopefully here in the near future when I get over to Sydney, Australia for one of our upcoming events. And I look forward to meeting you in person. And for all you remarkable CEOs, appreciate all of you. And I look forward to being with you again next week on the next episode of the Remarkable CEO podcast. Until then, take care, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.